Turkey's Black Sea coast is stunning. Perspectives, you could definitely watch them forever. But if you take a small step back, it appears from the shore that Turkey's coastal regions can boast more than simply the views of numerous insects and birds, amphibian and mammal species, in addition to loading abundant flora, and among all of this richness, with several endemic species that are unique to this area. But additionally, there is a seaside region known as Zonguldak province, where verdant scenery conceals a lengthy coal mining history that indicates that many locations lack nature. They once observed the ruined soil. In addition to a number of other items, it appears to be beyond repair. In actuality, though, the rescue was always rather intimate with the local herders, and the buffaloes are large creatures that don't appear to be able to bring any positive adjustments. They were nevertheless able to transform the damaged area into a focal point of what is biodiversity exactly. We will discuss with you if you're crossing the street today. The Turkish territories and observe a collection of there may be marshes or water. Buffaloes may be present to be more. In particular, we're discussing water. Anatolian buffaloes or buffaloes are the name. People in Turkey didn't give them any scientific rationale solely due to the place. The likelihood of seeing the aquatic animal demonstrates that it truly enjoys being a part of it, and that in Turkey, buffaloes aren't particularly uncommon or endangered species as per the Turkey Statistical Bulletin, Agriculture and Forestry Ministry. By 2024's end, there are 16,251 buffaloes wandering the land. That may appear to be a respectable amount, but let's examine the number of these animals reside in different nations. So let's consider Bangladesh in the year 2017. More than 1.8 million buffaloes were present. Strolling about and observing the 2015 saw the neighboring country of Nepal count all the animals, after which a report was issued, claiming that there are more than. Therefore, the conclusion is 836,500 buffaloes. Evident in Turkey, which has a larger area compared to Bangladesh and Nepal combined, there aren't a lot of buffaloes. In most countries in South Asia that raise water buffaloes are indigenous creatures. And in regards to Turkey today, despite the fact that they've been in existence for thousands of years, were in fact transported there by individuals. Indeed, some nations have distinct circumstances and strategies for handling these creatures, which explains the variations among the populations. Although here, the turkeys are what matter most. Presently attempting to restore the depopulation of Anatolian buffalo had a moment when their circumstances were actually in the 1970s. Roughly a million somewhere. Buffaloes were relaxing in the wetlands of Turkey. Then in 2010, local herders were astonished after doing a head count. They discovered that only 85,000 remained, which is why for such a significant shift as is frequently the case is about people's motivation to grow while ignoring the harm on the habitats of small lakes and marshes interfere with farming and other activities. Therefore, the majority of the time, we said that buffaloes were simply exhausted, similar to standing in water, but in reality, the situation is even more serious than that. Just need to control their body. In other terms, temperature using water for these creatures. Wetlands and lakes are settings in which they just cannot survive without it. They're not a coincidence. Referred to as water buffaloes as tiny ponds, when wetlands have decreased in size, so has their population. In addition to individuals, particularly in the previous century, was proud of heavy agriculture. Thus they didn't crop rotation, yet continued to drain the resources of the soil indefinitely. Therefore the soil might be destroyed, and nothing would develop in it no longer. This naturally also has an impact on the buffalo population, since in addition to standing in water, they must to wander around eating as well. Plants, followed by the buffalo population, begin to rise as a result of significant investments in enhancing the surroundings in addition to the need to import animals from. By the way, several of these other nations now, actions are still being taken because the nation truly wants to bring returning to their homelands. Buffaloes, for instance, in Tokat, which is in the north in Turkey. A project is being managed by the Tokat's Buffalo Breeders Association University. With assistance from the Agriculture and Forestry Ministry, they are reproducing under this project buffaloes that have caused the herd to increase size in the region, ranging from 200 to 1,000 perhaps within the past 10 years. People could be inspired to nurture additional creatures as well. Some progress has been made in that direction, even though farmers who raise animals would raise cows, but the food industry and the Ministry of Livestock is prepared to pay up. You receive 800 if you have a buffalo. There is also a plan for a Turkish laser, or $20, where a calf receives 350 L from the herder, 500 lasers, and more than 4 months of age for an adult animal. In addition to these animals' coverage like cows, their own breeding expenses. Buffaloes also produce milk, but only speaking of the same buffaloes, the price is higher. Grown on cow's milk in central Turkey, buffalo's milk costs 10 L and costs 2 L, so this is 5 times more costly. accounted for by the increased fat content contrasted with the cow variant in specifically. This ability enables them to Kmart is a regional favorite that can also sold, but there are other factors besides money. Turkey has been making a lot of effort to bring back a greater number of buffaloes. The buffalo has been shown to be an beast capable of ruining entire places by people entering hotspots of biodiversity, all of which took place on the area close to the Black Sea's coast. In Zongak was the previous name of the province. Century and the coal that came before it here, mining was quite prevalent. What's moreover, the provincial capital is known as in reality, Zongak was established as a harbor city to use shipping as a source of the resource, better access to adjacent coal mines. Due to extensive coal mining, in many regions of the provinces became locations where everyone they just entered when the wetlands dried up. The process of mining for the rescue of the habitat come from a place that few people anticipated. Mines shut down when their supplies ran out, as well as buffaloes that were raised close vicinity and subsequently released by local herders began visiting their territory. Longer stays and more frequent visits, what brought the animals to the mines, were naturally being worked in shallow holes, created with the cessation of mining at certain locations where these hollows were filled up. Recall that rainwater is raised in Turkey. Water buffaloes are creatures that simply adore. These rainwaters are standing in water. Fill pits serve as places for them to relax. In the meantime, that was essentially how it seemed. The buffalo is found everywhere. Become a factory that produces manure, which causes many insects, such as flies, to perceive it as the ideal target and continuously bombard its enormous body. The buffalo ultimately turns into a kind of insect carrying transportation in our situation. From one location to another, the buffaloes who came to hang today, out in the pits, filled with rain. Everything many insects with them. But by choose the buffalo to be their mount, insects are essentially signing their own death penalty because other creatures have furthermore learnt how to adjust to what's occurring in nature. According to one study in which a team of individuals examined who was on board the Anatolian buffalo, it was discovered that in 10 out of there were marsh frogs. On 12 of the instances, yes, there are flies there as well. The problem is that if amphibians are lingering on the insect populated, it's only temporary. Buffalo, since frogs only jump on buffalo once, justification for consuming all the flying and creepy creatures that reside on the horns animal, and this is an illustration of commensalism or reciprocal advantage. Buffaloes don't particularly enjoy cooperation. Frogs, and the insects that bite them all the time, shield the animals from pain and simultaneously obtain their meals. However, these passengers are not the only ones on the buffalo, since there are flora as well, and seeds, as opposed to frogs and insects. These travelers essentially lacked any decision regarding riding or not. Buffaloes simply roamed around the world, wetlands, and gathered a variety of seeds and plants on their own. And ultimately, when the buffalo gets to those exact waters, dirt pits close to the defunct coal mines, since it's hot outside, he cheerfully heads as directly into the water as possible. Suppose that a few of his passengers jump off the exact spot where their hooves ride halted, and frogs with insects can then occupy a pond that was deserted. Prior to the buffalo arriving, simultaneously manure will be dropped by the buffalo close by the pond or directly within it that provides an ideal location for insects to lay there. For instance, flies do this as larvae because manure is ideal. For cultivation, little frogs and insects are also content because they can relocate to a new location where more food will be available, such as flies and further bugs. And let's not overlook regarding the seeds, because of the buffaloes transported them from the marshes, where they are designed to flourish in a comparable setting. What if those are the water-filled pits? A buffalo carries several invasive species seeds. Plant itself in locations such as these. For an example would be arundo reed. Donax is easily absorbed. It's known as extremely invasive due to its growth almost 4 times a day and spread like wildfire. Species swiftly and efficiently drives out all other native plants. Taught to the region, this plant is a frequent ponted area. Cassiope, water hyacinth, is also invasive and spreads rapidly, displacing native species. And it impacts photosynthesis as well, or phytoplankton, in addition to submerged algae and plants limiting their growth. In addition, these two plants can ultimately result in the loss of irides. For instance, can suck in a body of water over 2.5 to 160 liters of water acres day. And the humidity increases evaporation may seem risky, so don't be alarmed. The buffalo is able to consume 26 pounds of grass every day. Yes, despite the unwanted plants are disseminated by the animal itself, also efficiently consumes them, removing region for different kinds of plants. And remember that buffaloes are manure factories that are similar to a natural plant fertilizer, so that the animal and introduce plants to nearby waterfill, halest coal mines, and provided a boost to growth. What is the outcome over time of the empty water-filled pits that transformed into wetlands, that are home to amphibians and insects, normal for the type of environment and at the same time Plants grow their. Every component of the enhances the others, like birds. Someone is absent from this place. Example for numerous animals with feathers. Turkey's Black Sea coastline is a part of their habitats and also tell us the white people's migration routes. For example, it travels to Africa for the winter, but it breeds first and lives precisely where it is raining. Pits close to defunct coal mines. One of shallow wetlands are its feeding grounds. Its diet may consist of amphibians like frogs and other insects, in general artificially created shallow water-filled trenches that, having undergone buffalo transformations or another bird, is in the ideal spot. Numerous crane species depend on shallow marshes, and the most of them, in fact, they nest there, and their diet consists of insects and amphibians alike. But additionally, this bird consumes plants that are abundant in the habitat that buffalo have. Built-in. There are a ton of these. Some birds don't simply settle on wetlands, that the buffaloes prototypically sit directly on the creature's nth conclusion. Similar to frogs, a mutual advantage connection develops between two distinct animals. The buffalo provides insects as a source of food, and it is protected from frequent bites by the birds. And the outcome that the buffalo contributed to a new habitat in the province of Zongodok. Andamans learn that with these animals they are able to repair the harm they have caused, transforming vacant spaces into populated. You understand why we can be certain that Turkey will continue to aggressively expand its buffalo population due to their visibility as one of the primary guardians of the Ecological Mac River. In particular, Delta, the river's flow location entering the Black Sea in a town in the Bafra, encompasses the Samsun region's greatest wetland area and the largest in the nation. Turkey thinks critically about these wetlands. A crucial bird is the river delta habitat, a significant plant area, and ultimately a vital hotspot for biodiversity. And that's not by accident. Wetlands span a total of are 500 plants on 53,600 acres. Species, in addition to 33 of the 160 ms species found in Turkey. In addition to a massive and numerous insect species, an abundance of fish and amphibians, since the river there is a delta where birds can nest and travel along the shore of the Black Sea. As up to 352 different bird species can be found here. Including here is the water for today's heroes, buffaloes among the instructors from, according to a local university. The very these species' existence is essentially similar to the delta's presence was made very evident in the previous entry. Based on the census taken in 1990, there were 10,000 buffaloes residing here. But the Mac River Delta in Kazilla is among the primary agricultural regions of the nation. Therefore, the animals were unfortunate enough to encounter chemical insecticides and human cruelty techniques for growing rice paddies, and they began to take its toll on other territory. And consequently, during the ensuing years, the population of 10,000 people decreased to just 2,800 people in the state of A's. The delta started to deteriorate. It became essential to resurrect those who utilize it, safeguard those whose existence itself is connected to the delta zone. In addition, 2 buffaloes in the river delta served as diggers of natural canals, joining distinct wetland areas to each toast that aid in the proliferation of fish. Even aquatic species benefit from buffalo. Furthermore, in the instance of the decisionally Kazilla Mac River Delta buffalo, the guardians of damp meadows only consume young trees and other vegetation that prevents the overgrowth of the meadow. Sand meadows are yet another popular location for biodiversity. Similar to wetlands, during aggressive measures, the Turks were able to increase the population from 2,800 people to 12,000 by 2021. The delta continues to face issues of infinite quantity of creatures, but objects have clearly, the Turks have improved, will make an effort to stay away from another population decline, and there are now a lot more initiatives designed to increase the quantity of buffaloes, so you don't have to be concerned. Regarding the reclaimed marshes next to theater and, at this time, abandoned coal mines point that, strangely enough, merits mentioned that not all buffaloes are expensive think, demonstrate the necessity of visiting a nation. Numerous animal species were present there, introduced merely to become accursed. Yes, we are discussing Australia. In the buffaloes from the 19th century were brought topher beef in the Northern Territory, and osses. Frequently the situation in Australia with things didn't go as planned with non-native animals designed. These northern settlements were left behind, and nobody retained the buffaloes in control, which resulted in their extending throughout northern Australia. Paired with the harsh climate of Austria, given the reality that indigenous plants and the buffaloes were unfamiliar to the animals, inflicted significant harm to numerous places. For buffaloes, for instance, have destroyed Native American hunting areas and sacred locations on the floodplains of the river close to Themaningita community, and western herds from Arnhem Land trample waterways and dig out a lot of swimming channels as well, which are genuinely found in places like Turkey. Beneficial to the environment. Yet in Australia, the buffalo's unrestrained excavation of wreckage, the soil is eroded by the vegetation, allowing saltwater seeps into areas of freshwater. Naturally, all of this has an impact on the creatures, such as the local ranger claims that the habitat was devastated by the buffalo of long-necked crocodiles, and in addition, the buffaloes had turtles. A negative impact on the magpie population. Geese are a vital source of food. Yes, Australia, for the local communities, is attempting to manage its wild buffaloes in several ways, including transferring them to foreign nations for example, from 2014 to 2019, from between 3,000 to 9,000 untamed buffalo were shipped a substantial amount to Southeast Asia. Many animals are killed and processed for beef. As of forecasts from 2019, the rate of natural population growth was around 27,000 animals annually, which is extremely many. Of the present measures are simply insufficient. Apparently, one nation is attempting to prevent the extinction of buffaloes while another is attempting to avoid becoming overwhelmed by these enormous creatures, as well as Turkey and Australia is attempting to correct other people's errors. Most often in circumstances it makes sense to collaborate in this way. The only method to deal with the issue most successfully.